Hello, everyone. My name is Nan Mulchandani, and I'm the Acting Director and CTO of the Joint Artificial Intelligence Center here at the DoD, and as you know it as the JAIC. So I'm really excited to have Michael Kratsios here today, who's joining us for a fireside chat. Although there is no fireplace here, but given how hot it's been, I know we're all feeling the heat. One of the funny things was we've got one flag here. Somebody before, when we started, said we put two ferns here, but I guess we could put two flags and call it between two flags, so didn't know how well that would go. So Michael, what an incredible background you have. You have a degree from Princeton, you're a visiting scholar at Tsinghua University, you were in the tech industry, the venture capital industry, what a great, great career. And then on to work at the White House as the Chief Technology Officer for the United States. And then, of course, now named as the Acting Undersecretary for Defense for Research and Engineering, and are also the DoD CTO. So I would almost start with the first question, which is, with those many jobs, how do you have time to sleep? But more seriously, you know, as part of your new responsibilities, you've got a really large part of the DoD's technology development, right? You've got DARPA, you've got the Missile Defense Agency, the Space Development Agency, DIU, all of our research labs. So between all these big areas, what are your top priorities, and how does AI fit into all of this?
Well, first off, thank you so much for including me in this amazing event today. This is a big opportunity for the department to showcase so much of the incredible work that's going on for the last couple of years. For the role around research and engineering, it's something that, you know, when I was at the White House, the DoD was always such a very critical part of the larger federal family and pushing forward research and development for the American people. And it's an incredible mission that is able to deliver results that not only help the warfighters, but often have incredible spillover effects for the country more broadly. And as being in this role now for a little time, I've sort of started to shape a bit of what we think the biggest priorities are for the department with regards to research engineering. I think the first one, and I think one that in some ways can often be seen or interpreted as a bit counterintuitive, is this idea of leveraging the unique authorities that the Defense Department has to drive innovation for the department and for the country. And the example that I always like to give is the incredible effort that the DoD is doing around 5G. And I've been working on this issue, as a U.S. CTO for some time, and how we can spur innovation and drive next generation testing and deployment of 5G networks. And what we have found outside of the DoD context is that it's actually really hard and really challenging to do that. Even if you're a well-resourced private firm and you have a city or locality that's excited to do a test, the amount of red tape and permitting and everything else has to go through to establish a robust test can make it very challenging, and usually you have to scope down your test or do it at a smaller scale. What we're able to do at the department with some of our deployments on some of our bases, I think we're going to name our 5 winners very soon, and 7 more to come. And at these installations, you can have far more robust tests than you could ever have in the private sector. It is an example of sometimes the DoD gets a bad rap for being archaic in the way it goes through its processes. But the one thing I'm constantly challenging the team is to think about what are the unique authorities that we do have, and how can we leverage those to drive results for the American people. The second issue or area or line of effort that I'm thinking very closely about and helping to drive is this emphasis on leveraging the full resources of the American innovation ecosystem towards our hardest problems. We have made progress over the years to kind of expand the scope of which technologists and scientists are part of the family working on these hard DoD problems, but we could always do more. And the transformation that we've seen in the U.S. innovation ecosystem over the last almost 70 years now has been enormous. Coming out of World War II, the vast majority of basic R&D was actually funded by the federal government.
Wow.
Now that has flipped entirely. Rather than being 70-30 federal-private, it's flipped on its head, and you have 30-70. And that's not a bad thing. That's actually amazing for the U.S. government. And what we need to be able to do is leverage the best R&D efforts from the private sector and bring them through partnerships into the department. And kind of the last effort, which I think is very important as we think thematically towards achieving our national defense strategy, is international partnerships. Right. This is not something that we can do alone. And a lot of the efforts that we'll chat about in a little bit relating to AI ethics and things like that, those are things that we cannot do alone, and we must bring our partners and allies into the mix with us. And I think that's something that I constantly push the team to think closely about.
Well, that's fantastic. I mean, you're bringing a perspective both at sort of the, international, national, and now the DoD level. So blending those together, what a great, sort of role to have and position. So going something more personal, which is wanted to discuss the R&E and Jake relationship.
Yeah.
Obviously the Jake was created a couple of years ago. You've been in the AI, sort of business and thinking about this even before the Jake was created. How do you see the relationship working out, and sort of how can we optimize that to get the best out of both organizations?
I think it's a fantastic partnership that's going to continue to grow over the years. I think when I think of kind of the core competencies of research engineering enterprise, it's about that early stage basic research that needs to be done to drive the next great breakthroughs in artificial intelligence. Then taking those and deploying them and creating tools that our warfighters can use in the battlefield is what you guys work on, and how we can optimize that handover and that relationship so that we're tightly linked as breakthroughs are happening in the labs and across the enterprise, and figuring out the best way to move them into deployment is kind of where I think about a lot. I think a great example is efforts that DARPA did on deepfakes that have now been kind of pulled into the Jake process, and I think we're also working on adversarial AI together. This idea of how can we, once we're actually deploying AI tools, how can we harden those and make sure that they're not susceptible to adversarial attack? That's
fantastic. Yes, absolutely. I think this idea of R&E generating the big ideas and investing at scale, and the Jake being a fielding organization focused on hopefully taking those and being able to get them fielded out there. Really, absolutely, this give and take would be fantastic. So like I mentioned, your unique sort of role, background, and experience, at the national level and then the DoD. So moving up from the DoD to the national level, would you mind covering some of the bigger ideas around that you've been pushing, and talking about as the CTO for the United States? Yeah. Because at a national level and government-wide level, I think AI has significance even beyond the DoD. So any thoughts and sort of initiatives there?
Absolutely. I think over the last 3 years, we've seen a tremendous emphasis across interagency and all the way up to the White House on ensuring American leadership in artificial intelligence. Very early on in this administration, there was this desire to begin to emphasize AI, and particularly what are the things that we need to do as a federal government to drive leadership in this particular critical domain as our adversaries are stepping up? And the first major step was the signing of artificial intelligence executive order, and that laid out the national strategy for AI, which is, I think the next day or 2 days later, the DoD actually put out their AI strategy. So it was a well sequenced rollout. But I think what was critical about that AI executive order, it laid out the thematic vision, or the sort of the four main lines of effort that we as a country need to drive to ensure our leadership. And the first is around research and development. It is absolutely critical that we are making the next great breakthroughs in AI and machine learning here in the United States. And that is something that requires a whole of government commitment to the endeavor. It can't just be the National Science Foundation tinkering with their stuff and DARPA doing their thing and NIH doing their thing, and the DOE labs doing
pipes.
Exactly. These agencies need to come together, and part of the strategy was releasing an R&D strategic plan, and there's four core elements around that, and now there is a sort of vision and guiding document for the larger R&D enterprise across the department to not only increase funding and support financially towards research and development, but actually coordinate that and make sure that it's done and used effectively. The second line of effort is always around, no matter what technology we're working on, is around workforce. And I think it's something that you guys are constantly thinking about, of how you can build a Jake workforce, and we are on our team over here as well. But broadly speaking, it's very challenging to build a large-scale, robust pipeline of talented AI scientists that want to continue to make the next breakthroughs. And incentivizing those and figuring out what levers the federal government has to prioritize grants and fellowships and other types of funding opportunities so these researchers continue to enter that field is something that the executive order really pushes on. The third is around removing barriers to AI innovation. I generally tend to see the world of emerging technologies in sort of two buckets. They're either technologies that are born in captivity or technologies that are born free. And technologies that are sort of born in captivity are often technologies that are the hardest to commercialize. So those are things like drones or autonomous vehicles or nuclear power. These are examples of technologies. Once you make a breakthrough, you can't actually commercialize them as an entrepreneur or a scientist unless the government says, yes, it is okay, I give you approval.
I see. So regulation.
Exactly. Versus technologies that are born free. You can say the internet, for example, is probably the most commonly used example, where there's technology that people have built on for decades, and we have an extraordinarily vibrant digital economy because of that. So part of the mission of the AI executive order was to identify the barriers for innovation around AI-powered technologies and allow the U.S. to be the lead and not allow regulations to kind of hamstring us. And one of the major outputs of that is something I think we'll talk about in a little bit, which is our AI regulatory principles and actually being able to sort of provide confidence to the community and consistent sort of guidance to the industry over kind of what the government is looking at when it comes to AI regs, and we're the first in the world to do that. And in the last piece, which I think we mentioned a little bit early on as an R&E priority, is around international engagement. We recognize that our adversaries are pushing ahead with a very different view on the way AI should generally be used. And it's critical for the U.S. to join forces with our allies to make sure that the West is the home for the next great technological discoveries. And one of the big initiatives we did was go to the OECD and lead the development of the OECD AI principles, which were the first ever AI principles that were agreed to by governments. This was an effort that the U.S. led there and has served as a foundation for sort of the Western liberal democracies as they pursue AI regulation. So, long story short, the main strategy and theme really centers around research and development, workforce, regulations, and international engagement.
That's fascinating. I mean, one thing that I'm getting from just this discussion is, you've had a real focus on, focusing on what government does great, in terms of what are the things that government should do, things that private industry should do, having a framework and having these, applying the best of government to enabling and opening it up for private industry. That's a fantastic theme here. And along those lines, I mean, one thing that I think the symposium attendees would like to know is, how are you putting together the sort of budgets, when it comes to both the DoD, but also actually government-wide. I mean, being part of the White House, having this pan-government vision around what investments we need to make. Would love to hear kind of how you're thinking through that and the scale of what we're doing here.
Yeah, I mean, with the US CTO hat, I think the first thing we're thinking about was, how can you shift the larger federal government, massive sort of aircraft carrier toward reorienting to a new R&D priority. And it can be extraordinarily challenging. And I think that the best way to do it is to kind of use higher level administration goals and guidance that can trickle down to all the agencies.
Excellent.
And in the 2021 budget, the president set the goal to double AI spending over the next 2 years. And this was a really, I believe, a tremendous step forward for the country. Actually setting a goal and saying over 2 years we believe that our R&D ecosystem can actually absorb those dollars and absorb them in a way which will continue to drive high quality research across the agencies. Because that's kind of the first thing. You can turn the dial on the dollars.
Exactly.
But if they're being wasted, it's not really good use.
That's right.
So the first assessment was done is how many sort of essentially high quality proposals are out there and unfunded. And National Science Foundation has sort of done very interesting work on this because they have a very rigorous process in evaluating their grants, and they can definitely absorb this type of plus up. And so that was announced in February of this year, and the first full cross-cut of the 21 budget actually came out this month, and what was very interesting about that was we are very much on our way to achieving that doubling. We are up over 50% year over year, and are going to hit the doubling target as a whole of government next year. So we moved from a little shy of $1 billion in sort of non-defense AI spending to a little over $1.5 billion. Also, what you can see is that in some ways, I think that the DoD was actually leading the charge before the White House got its act together to realize that we need to push the ball here. In 2018, DARPA, as many of you know, launched AI Next, and that was a $2 billion commitment towards AI. The JAIC has obviously seen sort of tremendous support both from the Hill and from the department-wide budgets on ramping up in a way that can allow it to build the teams and start deploying its efforts. So I think a few years ago, you guys, I think were under $100 million, and now you're almost at 300. So there's great progression there in showing that this commitment to dollars. But I think it's not just the money alone, and I want to stress that. I think the dollars are just kind of one piece of the larger puzzle, and what's critical now is with this incredible investment and commitment by the federal government towards AI leadership, we need to make sure that those dollars are spent in a very smart and effective way.
Yeah, no, that's an amazing point. I mean, like you mentioned, the dial, right? This idea of the technology commoditization curve, right? We've seen this over and over again for dozens and dozens of years. The idea of, scaling the right pieces of AI with money, which you have to lean into, and then bending the technology commoditization curve with investments on the research side. It's a little bit of an art, but that's sort of the whole game here, which is how do we actually invest this correctly, as you're saying, with that emphasis, but focusing on the right side of the curves.
No, absolutely. It's not an easy job. That's why smart people like you.
No, please. So one topic on everyone's mind at the symposium and AI in general is around ethics and policy and regulation and all the other pieces. And you made a fantastic point, right? This idea of applying and using the government's role the right way to create this, as you said, the captivity versus free. How do you open things up so commercial industry can flourish, research can happen, things like that, but within the bounds of what we as a society want to see and the principles and values that we like and cherish. So what thoughts do you have on that and the work that you've done, which you've been very active in this? So I think the audience would love to hear that.
Well, I think, first off, it's sort of important to think of what the global landscape looks like. It's very clear we have an adversary in the CCP that is twisting this technology in a way that is violently unaligned with the way the United States and the West views technological innovation.
Right.
AI is being used by the CCP to sort of track ethnic minorities, to suppress freedom of speech, to do all sorts of things that we definitely do not want artificial intelligence to be used for. So in that context, I think it becomes more imperative than ever to ensure that the U.S. leads with a set of principles around AI which are rooted in our American values. And the first step from a sort of government-wide standpoint was to provide regulatory certainty around what that means. And this is an emphasis on sort of trustworthy, safe, robust AI that's rooted in American values and ethics. And what I think was very important around this document, and in the executive order, the president asked the White House to essentially produce a regulatory guidance document to the agency. So any agency that was going to be promulgating any regs that affected AI technologies in the private sector, what are the considerations they should take in making that reg? So first and foremost, what we argued, and I think is very much aligned with kind of what happened here at the DoD, is the critical importance and understanding of sector-specific approaches. And I think very much that the conversation, fortunately, moves to these super high-level, 100,000-foot views on what should be the right pathway towards AI ethics or AI regulatory posture more broadly. But you quickly realize that the questions that the Department of Transportation and NHTSA face when they're attempting to create a regulation for a new car that's not going to have a steering wheel or brake pedal are very different than the types of considerations that the FAA is taking into play when you have a drone doing commercial operations, or when you have the FDA trying to approve an AI-powered medical diagnostic, or for the case of DoD, how you actually implement AI into a kill chain or anything else that we'll be working on here. So for us, and what was very critical that the White House laid laid out was it has to be sector specific.
Wow.
And that guidance got put out in earlier this year, is out for comment, and hopefully we'll be able to have a final version before the end of the calendar year. And I think from that you will see individual agencies that are dealing with regulation start thinking very carefully around how they can tune their regulatory posture to align with sort of the ethical and American values that are laid out in that memo, but are specific to their sector.
That's fantastic. Yeah, this idea of a single regulation, across all of these domains, and also AI itself is not a single market.
Yeah.
It's a collection of technologies applying different things to different things. So that approach sounds amazing. I know we're coming to sort of the our time here, but we talked DoD, we talked national level. And you obviously have had a role in sort of the international stage as well on the technology front. So anything to talk about sort of AI? You touched upon our adversaries, allies. Just going a little deeper into that. Any thoughts or comments, both policy, but partnerships, a whole bunch of other things there.
I think it's actually critically important in the world of artificial intelligence. For the last couple of years, the United States has been very thoughtful about the way that it approaches international engagement, and it's something that we as a country need to be very sure of it's in the best interest of the American people before we sort of pursue international initiatives. And I think that was spelled out in the National Defense Strategy, that it's critically important that we actually do that and are thoughtful about it. So I think the efforts that the United States made at the OECD to say we are willing to with arms in arms with our sort of developed economies around the world, we will lay down and agree to the first international AI principles, was a huge step forward. And it shows how critically important engagement with our allies are on this issue because of the things we talked about, of the way our adversaries are thinking about it. And as our adversaries try to influence the way that AI is sort of impacting citizens around the entire world, we need to provide the right positive Western-based alternative to that, and I think we can do that, and I think we're seeing it through the AI principles. And I think that is something that sort of the DoD is going to continue to think about as well, with the very critical sort of AI ethics principles that we put out as a department.
Absolutely.
This department has sort of led the world for decades on the way that sort of the right way to conduct and engage sort of a military department, and it's sort of set an example for the rest of the world. And I think it was an incredible step forward for us to kind of be the first out of the gate as anywhere in the world to kind of put these out. And I think it will serve as an example for many of our allies as they grapple through the very hard questions. So
thought leadership at an international stage that then drives everybody, to sort of in the same direction.
Absolutely.
What a great, almost great way to end. I thought we'd end actually with just one small thing, kind of what I call the crystal ball moment, right? You are the Chief Technology Officer. You are the primary, technological leader for the DoD driving this forward. You've been involved in obviously AI, quantum computing, 5G, all these great technologies. How do you see these things coming together? I mean, it's obviously a really, really hard question, but I thought, just some ideas on how you're approaching the fusion of these things coming together and what those capabilities might mean for us here at the DoD.
Yeah, I think the most critical thing that everyone working on these issues across the department needs to constantly keep in mind is we are not benefiting the department or the American people by thinking about these technologies in stovepipes.
Wow.
There has to be integration among them. And as a department, we have 11 modernization priorities. You mentioned 3 of them. Those are probably some of our most important ones. But there is no way that future deployment of these technologies for uses by our warfighters is going to benefit by people thinking about those technologies in isolation. And I think that's something that I constantly challenge my team. And if you zoom up a level and think about sort of the larger national picture, the PCAS, the Presidential Council of Advisors of Science and Technology, that advises the President and the White House on science matters, they put out a report a couple months ago around kind of this exact question. And they truly believe that the greatest benefits can be reaped by the American people if you were able to do the R&D associated with some of these technologies in sort of co-located spaces or in places where you already are thinking about the integration. And it's great to have individuals individual research programs or institutes on singular technologies, but you can get a lot more benefits if you can start working things together. So that's something I know I'll be working on for a long time, and I think the department certainly is going to be focused on.
Wow. This has been great. Thank you so much for your time. Obviously, best of luck with all your jobs, various things. But having your leadership and vision here is going to be really, really welcome and exciting.
Thank you. That means a lot. This has been an incredible conversation.
Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you.
Hello. I'm Secretary of Defense Mark Esper, and it's a privilege to join you today as part of the Defense Department's AI Symposium. I want to thank Nand Mulchandani and his team at the Joint Artificial Intelligence Center, or JAIC, for organizing this important event and for bringing together the best and brightest minds in the department who are working to accelerate the adoption of critical emerging technologies. Today, I'd like to speak to you about why the United States must continue to lead the way in the responsible and ethical development of artificial intelligence, and more specifically, why the Department of Defense must remain at the forefront of the military application of this game-changing technology. History informs us that those who are first to harness once-in-a-generation technologies often have a decisive advantage on the battlefield for years to come. I experienced this firsthand during Operation Desert Storm, when the United States military's smart bombs, stealth aircraft, and satellite-enabled GPS helped decimate Iraqi forces and their Soviet equipment. In today's era of great power competition, as new technologies alter the character of warfare, we must stay ahead of our near-peer rivals, namely China and Russia. Our national defense strategy guides us in doing just that, as we modernize the force and protect our competitive advantage across all domains: air, land, sea, space, and cyberspace. Thanks to our largest research and development budget in the department's history, we are accelerating the development of critical technologies that will enable us to outpace our strategic competitors and maintain our military overmatch. But unlike advanced munitions or next-generation platforms, artificial intelligence is in a league of its own, with the potential to transform nearly every aspect of the battlefield, from the back office to the front lines. That is why we cannot afford to cede the high ground to revisionist powers intent on bending, breaking, or reshaping international rules and norms in their favor, to the collective detriment of others. In 2017, Russian President Vladimir Putin declared that whichever nation leads in AI will be the ruler of the world. He ordered his government to develop a national AI strategy and called for increased investments. His intent is to employ any possible advantage to expand Russia's influence and chip away at the sovereignty of others. We saw this with Russia's incursion into Ukraine, when Russian forces used a sophisticated and well-coordinated combination of unmanned aerial vehicles, cyber attacks, and artillery barrages to inflict severe damage on Ukrainian forces. Since then, Moscow has announced the development of AI-enabled autonomous systems across ground vehicles, aircraft, nuclear submarines, and command and control. We expect them to deploy these capabilities in future combat zones. Likewise, the Chinese Communist Party recognizes the transformational power of AI and openly declares its intentions to be the world leader by 2030. The People's Liberation Army regards AI as a leapfrog technology, which could enable low-cost, long-range autonomous vehicles and systems to counter America's conventional power projection. At this moment, Chinese weapons manufacturers are selling autonomous drones they claim can conduct lethal targeted strikes. Meanwhile, the Chinese government is advancing the development of next-generation stealth UAVs, which they are preparing to export internationally. If there is any doubt as to how the CCP would wield AI to influence its agenda abroad, look no further than how it uses this capability at home. Beijing is constructing a 21st century surveillance state designed to wield unprecedented control over its own people. With hundreds of millions of cameras strategically located across the country and billions of data points generated by the Chinese Internet of Things, the CCP will soon be able to identify almost anyone entering a public space and censor dissent in real time. More troubling is the fact that these systems can be used to invade private lives, leaving no text message, internet search, purchase, or personal activity free from Beijing's tightening grip. As we speak, the PRC is deploying and honing its AI surveillance apparatus to support the targeted repression of its Muslim Uyghur population. Likewise, pro-democracy protesters in Hong Kong are being identified, seized, imprisoned, or worse, by the CCP's digital police state, unencumbered by privacy laws or ethical governing principles. As China scales this technology, we fully expect it to sell these capabilities abroad, enabling other autocratic governments to move toward a new era of digital authoritarianism. The contrast between American leadership on AI and that of Beijing and Moscow couldn't be clearer. We are pioneering a vision for emerging technology that protects the U.S. Constitution and the sacred rights of all Americans. Abroad, we seek to promote the adoption of AI in a manner consistent with the values we share with our allies and partners: individual liberty, democracy, human rights, and respect for the rule of law, just to name a few. Indeed, we approach AI as we have other high-tech breakthroughs throughout our department's history, with rigorous standards for testing and fielding capabilities, and the highest ethical expectations. Technology may constantly change, but our commitment to our core values does not. In February, we became the first military in the world to adopt ethical principles for the use of AI, based on core values such as transparency, reliability, and governability. These principles make clear to the American people and the world that the United States will once again lead the way in the responsible development and application of emerging technologies, reinforcing our role as the global security partner of choice. To build on this foundation, we are designing a comprehensive strategy to train and educate all DoD personnel, from AI developers to end users, so that everyone understands their role in accelerating the department's digital modernization strategy. Over the last 6 months, for example, the department has stood up a responsible AI committee that brings together leaders from across the enterprise to foster a culture of AI ethics within their organizations. In addition, the JAIC has launched the Responsible AI Champions Program, a 9-week training course for DoD personnel directly involved in the AI delivery pipeline. We plan to scale this program to all DoD components over the coming year. Further, the JAIC, in partnership with the Defense Acquisition University and the Naval Postgraduate School, will launch an intensive 6-week pilot course next month to train over 80 defense acquisition professionals of all ranks and grades. These trainees will learn how to apply AI and data science skills to our operations. With the support of Congress, the department plans to request additional funding for the services to grow this effort over time and deliver an AI-ready workforce to the American people. As the Defense Department builds a digital security architecture to promote responsible and ethical AI development, we are also shaping new international norms for the use of this technology. Next week, the JAIC will launch the first ever AI partnership for defense to engage military and defense organizations from more than 10 nations with a focus on incorporating ethical principles into the AI delivery pipeline. Over the coming year, we expect to expand this initiative to include even more countries as we create new frameworks and tools for data sharing, cooperative development, and strengthened interoperability. We have come a long way since establishing the JAIC 2 years ago. Today, more than 200 talented civil service and military professionals work diligently to accelerate AI solutions and deliver these capabilities to the warfighter. From helping the Joint Force organize, fight, and win at machine speed, to enhancing wildfire and flood responses through computer vision technology, the JAIC is utilizing every aspect of AI as a transformative instrument at home and abroad. The JAIC is also lowering technical barriers to AI adoption by building a cloud-based platform to allow DoD components to test, validate, and field capabilities with greater speed at greater scale. The goal is to make AI tools and data accessible across the force, which will help synchronize projects and reduce redundancy, among many other benefits. As an example of the tectonic impact of machine learning on the future of warfighting, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, recently conducted its third and final F-16 combat simulation between an AI-controlled system and an experienced Air Force fighter pilot. The AI agent's resounding victory demonstrated the ability of advanced algorithms to outperform humans in virtual dogfights. These simulations will culminate in a real-world competition involving full-scale tactical aircraft in 2024. To be clear, AI's role in our lethality is to support human decision-makers, not replace them. We see AI as a tool to free up resources, time, and manpower so our people can focus on higher priority tasks and arrive at the decision point, whether in a lab or on the battlefield, faster and more precise than the competition. For instance, AI is advancing automated chemistry for a host of national security applications, including the continuous manufacturing of critical pharmaceuticals and the development of novel propellants for spacecraft engines. These advances free up time for our scientists and researchers to focus on next-generation innovation rather than countless tests and experiments. Furthermore, through DARPA's Spectrum Collaboration Challenge, we are demonstrating the power of machine learning to improve spectrum usage through autonomous collaboration, which has enormous implications for future military and commercial networking, especially with 5G. Lastly, to fully realize the potential of AI across the Defense Department, we are committed to reforming outdated policies, divesting from legacy systems, modernizing our acquisition practices, and strengthening our partnerships across industry and academia. Decades ago, the federal government supplied the bulk of research and development funding for many of the department's most important hardware capabilities. Today, the private sector leads the way in software. We need to be fast followers of our industry partners and work hand in hand with them to develop AI at the speed and scale needed to stay ahead of the competition. During the department's coronavirus response, for example, the JAIC worked alongside industry to develop a predictive analytics tool that helped U.S. Northern Command manage supply chains and identify hotspots with the greatest need. And in academia, the Army AI Task Force at Carnegie Mellon University and the Air Force AI Accelerator sit at the crossroads of higher education, industry, and defense, rapidly prototyping cutting-edge innovation. Ultimately, these kinds of solutions are vital not only for our Department of Defense missions, but also for the good of the American people. With each generation come new technologies that fundamentally alter the way we think about, plan, and prepare for war. AI is one such breakthrough with boundless potential, for good or for ill. However, unlike our competitors, we commit to using these capabilities to preserve peace, promote prosperity, respect rights, and maintain the free and open order that benefits all nations. As the epicenter of groundbreaking innovation, the United States will once again lead the way in developing and governing emerging technologies. We will stay true to our core values and principles. We will remain the global security partner of choice, and together, with our allies and partners, we will defend the international rules and norms that have secured our rights and our homeland for generations. Thank you for your time, and thank you for all that you do to ensure the Department of Defense remains the standard of excellence at home and abroad.